let's get a little bit more into the domestic issues. And I want to say, I'm sorry it's coming to this. For people who are watching, you might not want your kids to hear this stuff. This stuff's dark stuff. But this is the president's son, the Daily Mail reports. Naked Hunter Biden filmed himself smoking crack, drinking hard seltzer, and you can do himself. I just say that.
You can read it yourself at home.
Yeah, while floating inside a sensory deprivation tank 1 month after convincing Dad Joe to wire him $20,000 for his detox program. The first family, the son of the president. These videos are coming out because the laptop got released, and the stuff we're learning about this family is dark. It's bad stuff. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And in my personal opinion, I think Joe Biden was abusive towards his kids, because you don't turn out like Hunter Biden unless you had bad parents doing something. Bad family. You take a look at how Hunter Biden turned out, and then you have to ask yourself about the leadership capabilities of Joe Biden, and then you look at the country and you start to put it together, right? So I don't know, what your thoughts are on all this stuff. More of this is going to keep coming out. I think it absolutely is indicative of who the Democrats are willing to elect, regardless of their moral character and of the leadership capabilities of the man himself.
That is the point right there. We knew there were problems. This is not news to a lot of people. I was following this before the 2020 election. I knew a lot of this before the 2020 election. And the fact that the media kept that, the corporate media bosses kept that from making its way to the people so they could make an educated vote and decision when they went to vote.
Look at Twitter.
But there were a lot of Democrats who probably knew that and said they didn't like Trump, so they so wanted to get President Trump out that they were willing to vote for someone like that.
The reality is, Trump has done bad stuff. He's said mean things. He called Stormy Daniels horse face. Didn't he call someone a fat pig or something like that?
Rosie O'Donnell.
Only Rosie O'Donnell. That's right. I remember that from the debate. Only Rosie O'Donnell.
But here's the issue: the overwhelming majority of the bad things they claimed Trump did, they made up. They fabricated it. So
I just don't want to get distracted by Donald Trump when we're talking about the Biden family.
Yeah.
Biden family is its own thing that's pretty horrific when you start to dig it open.
Agreed. My point is just we had an election in 2020, and it was between Trump and it was between Biden. And what the Biden voters are going to say is, you expected me to vote for Trump?
Yes.
He called white supremacists very fine people, which he never actually did. Exactly. And so they believe the lies about Trump. They believe the lies about people like Kyle Rittenhouse. I tweeted that the Kyle Rittenhouse thing was put me over the edge to vote for Trump, because I saw how they're trying to destroy this guy, and we needed to push back and stop this. And that was and Trump pinned it to his profile on Twitter. And that was used by many on the left to accuse me of being wrong or being right wing or whatever, or far right. But I was correct.
When in fact, you actually had the courage to stand up and say the truth about a young man who was being persecuted. And exactly. They wanted to tear you apart and destroy you. And when that happened to you, you probably went, ooh, I think I know a little bit what it must be like to be President Trump right now. I'm feeling that myself because I'm being attacked right now. And
you're getting 1/50th of it.
Exactly. I talked to President Trump regularly, and I said, I know I'm getting the Trump treatment right now. And, you said he's done some bad things. I don't think he has. I disagree with you on that. I think he's done some amazing things. His family, I know them. They're incredible people. But the media has been tearing them apart relentlessly since 2015, 2016. And some people have just bought into that because they still believe the media. And what I want to tell people after working in it for 30 years is turn it off. Do not believe it. They've got an agenda, and you just can't believe it. I mean, honestly, I'm getting better information here at Timcast. You're putting out, I'm listening to you before this show, and you're very thoughtful on what you're putting out and making sure things are accurate. We're not all perfect. Sometimes you make a mistake. I'm watching you, and after working 30 years in TV and in journalism, I'm thinking this is more journalism than what I was seeing in journalism the last at least 5-6 years.
I will say, to clarify my point on Trump, I think Trump is great. I think I can understand why people don't like his character. I tell these stories. I've talked to regular people, say they don't like the way he talks, but I know a lot of people do like the way he talks. And the way I saw it was we needed someone to fight back, especially with the media lying about people like Kyle Rittenhouse. But no one's perfect.
We needed a brash New Yorker to come in. Remember, he beat back 18 other Republicans, many of them rhinos, establishment swamp creatures. We needed a tough, brash New Yorker who told it like it was. We couldn't get some mealy mouth person to do that. And thank God he came in at that point.
But there are things that Trump, here's what I want to say. What Joe Biden is, I view him as corrupt. I view Trump as having done bad things as either mistakes or making bad decisions. People are allowed to make mistakes. People are allowed to make bad decisions. You criticize them for it and say, do better. There's things about Donald Trump that I personally don't like, but for the most part, I think he's a good guy. I think he was actually a really great president. I don't like some of his foreign policy decisions, but I overwhelmingly like his foreign policy. So commando raid potentially killed a little girl, an American citizen. That's what we've heard. I would like to see an inquiry into that. Getting our troops out of the Middle East was the first president in my lifetime who not only did not start a war, but was actually ending wars. So for that, here's what I want to be careful of. If you come out and you're just like, Trump is the best, he's so good, then people who have questions about things he's done, they close down. But I also don't want to play this game where it's like, oh, Trump was so awful, when the reality is, oh yeah, it wasn't perfect. He did some things that I think were questionable, wrong, or just bad. But Joe Biden is a hundredfold.
Yeah,
100-fold.
I think
worse.
what you're saying is you're trying to say, hey, Trump wasn't perfect. We're all humans, but Joe Biden is not just imperfect. He is corrupt,
malicious.
He's actually
malicious. And you look at his family. We know Trump's got attacked and his children got attacked. Joe Biden raised this family, and if you look at his daughter's diary, I mean, this is crossing the line in a serious way where police should have been involved, possibly even arrests involved.
Joe Biden.
There's such insidious stuff in that family.
Yeah.
And it's not just the reasons that people dislike either of them, but there's such an organic appeal to Trump, whereas the support for Biden is all reluctant support because they hated Trump.
I don't see anybody enthusiastic about Biden.
No.
Never.
And I didn't see it before 2020
they're
either.
so brazenly just screwing the American people.
Yeah, it's almost like their hatred for President Trump is so overwhelming and eating them up that they're willing to sacrifice our country, our Constitution, our freedoms to okay, we got him out.
I don't know if it's actually that they hate Trump. I don't know if they're smart enough to actually hate the man. So I think it may have been Austin Peterson, Lydia, correct me if I'm wrong, who was talking about a friend of theirs. But we had a guest on saying their friend believed, they were like a liberal Democrat, that Trump called white nationalists very fine people. And so he said, just here, read the transcript. And the person started reading it and then like paused and then scrolled back and started reading it again and then just froze, got up and left the room. Unable to process the fact that Donald Trump never said white nationals were very fine people.
I don't remember who that was.
Yeah, it was Austin Peterson.
It was Austin Peterson talking. Yeah.
I remember that, and it was a huge story. And I remember hearing his entire remarks and going, I don't remember him saying that. Then the media would perpetuate it over and over. And I even went back a couple of times and listened to what President Trump said. Am I hearing something wrong? Because everyone's saying he said this, and I remember hearing that. Looking back at it a couple times just to make sure I didn't mishear it.
So I don't think they hate Trump. I mean, they do hate him, but what I mean to say is it's not real because they don't know. They didn't investigate. They didn't bother to. I think what actually motivates these people is fitting in. So you walk around New York and everyone just says, oh, yeah, I hate Trump, too. And so they go, OK, that's their identity.
Fitting in socially is more important
than
being inquisitive and finding out the truth.
For me,
Do you think people living in more conservative areas do the same thing?
Well, I can tell you because I live in a red state. I think we're we're a lot more, who cares what they think about us? We want the truth.
Yep.
Now, not to say we don't have people in Arizona who are, like you just described, they're more, the peer pressure gets to them. That's why when I see, to be honest, a young conservative, and we have a lot of them involved in our campaign, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired by you. And I think, oh, I'm a middle-aged woman. Of course I'm going to be bossy and tell it like it is. This is what middle-aged women do, right? But I say, no, I'm inspired by you. When there's a young person, 18, 20 years old, 22, who's pushing back against that peer pressure, is that what you still call it? Peer pressure, is that an outdated word? They're pushing back against their social pressure, social media, and speaking the truth. That is actually very courageous.
Well, let's talk about the founding fathers, because before the show we had some interesting data points. Lydia, do you still have that data about the founding fathers?
Yeah.
Do you want to read it?
Sure. Well, we pulled it up, and it looks like the founding fathers were, I want to say James Monroe was 18 years old.
18.
This is when
These are the signers
when
of the
they signed the
Declaration.
Declaration of Independence.
18.
18 years old. Yep. 2 of them were 20 years old. The oldest one mentioned here was, Thomas Jefferson was 33.
Wow.
And we have 20, 20, and 25.
Who were the
that's
20?
Madison was
insane.
25?
I believe so, yeah.
I saw
Monroe was
the
18.
responses to that. It's a tweet, right? Listing
No,
those
it's a
ages.
story.
I saw a tweet that was listing those ages, and the responses were like, well, it's because the life expectancy back then was like 45. So an 18-year-old was the same as a
But that's-
35-year-old.
It's not true.
That's
Like,
not true. Yeah.
If the reason the average life expectancy was so low was because of infant mortality.
Yeah,
But if you
exactly.
survived infancy, you were expected to live to be
Exactly.
70 or 80 years old.
Yeah,
And we were talking, I think it was Ian and I were saying, and I would take a 9 or 10-year-old from that era because they were so competent. They could farm, they could hunt, they could do anything. They were so resourceful. I would trade them probably for, the average person in America today who is not able to have those survival skills that they had
Somebody
back then.
stoned on aspartame. These crazy fake sugars.
Well, we're not
Splenda.
practically skilled or emotionally sophisticated, like developed either.
Well, you talked
Yeah.
about what's happening with farmers, and maybe there could be a food shortage at some point. Back then, they wouldn't worry about that because they were growing their own food.
You know, regarding this climate change fear that they're telling farmers not to grow food, I find this sad because there's a lot of evidence that we can withdraw the carbon from the atmosphere. I don't know if you've been following or even
With
know
more
about
farming?
this. What's that?
With more farming.
With more farming. I don't know.
Plants absorb carbon.
That's one way to do it, but you can actually deposit the carbon dioxide onto like palladium or other metals and then withdraw the carbon from it and get graphene, just
here we
a
go.
building material. But they don't know. It's like the politicians either don't know. I assume they don't know. It's ignorance, because if they knew, there would be another discussion like it's the most valuable resource on Earth, this carbon. And if we could just get it back, you can get it right out of the smokestack too.
Well, so Ian, do you know where the mass of a tree comes from?
The roots.
No. Were
That's
you
my
being
guess.
serious? Or
I don't know.
Do you guys know where
The
like
bark.
a tree grows, right? There's mass accumulating. Where does that matter come from?
Oh, CO2.
That's right.
Because
Comes from the air.
It sucks out kind of what we consider
Exactly.
pollution. What we consider pollution is its life.
The building
it's
blocks
needed.
of a tree come from the air. It takes the carbon, it builds.
It's like
from
how
the air.
ours comes from the food that we eat. That's their food, is the carbon dioxide. Well, it's also water.
Well, and
stuff
they
in the
emit
soil.
oxygen as
They
well,
make-
right? We kind of are.
They take the carbon dioxide and rip the carbon off and spit the oxygen back
Mm-hmm.
out. So when you have farmers being told not to farm, it's like those crops actually absorb carbon from the
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere. Why would you not want that? Now I can understand concerns about nitrogen is what they're saying, not necessarily talking about carbon. But we want more plants to be growing. So why wouldn't you just be like, hey, plant a bunch of trees? Like, allocate a certain amount of time, plant trees in these places. Anyway, look, I'm not going to pretend to be an environmental expert because I'm sure whatever I said made no sense. Some scientist is probably like, Tim, you're wrong for these
Sure,
reasons.
but like government
but don't you
pencil
think that-
pushers
That
don't
also
really
doesn't mean
know
you are
anything
wrong.
either.
Exactly.
They're
They're in the
legislating
same
on
position.
it. Yeah.
What were you saying, Kari?
Well, I think we all want a healthy environment. We want to have clean air, clean water. But it's gotten to the point where it's being pushed so much that it's destroying our economy, pushing companies out. Oh, you're going to pollute too much CO2. And the company finally says, we'll just move it to China or India.
Yep.
And then they take all those jobs away. They destroy all those families. They destroy a local economy. And, talk about an animal in peril, the human being. But yet the environmentalists are okay with that company setting up a manufacturing or factory in another country and polluting there.
There was actually
China and India are terrible about pollution.
Right. And
don't have
so do you care about the world, the globe, or don't you?
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.